Our next speaker this morning really needs no introduction to many of you in this audience. Msgr. James Lisante is the pastor of Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Massapequa Park, New York. He's authored 4 books, including Of Life and Love, Let's Talk, Personally Speaking, and The Power of One. Long active in the popular media, he has hosted several nationally televised programs, including Personally Speaking and Christopher Close Up. He's also a regular contributor to Fox News Channel and the ABC Eyewitness News Channel. The Lord, he puts his special servants in just the right places here, right on the mainstream media. He has appeared on PBS, MSNBC, CNN, CBS, and Nightline with Ted Koppel, and survived them all, I think, Father. Yeah, you made it through. And he's the host of a weekly radio program called Personally Speaking. It's every year our delight and my privilege to introduce to you Msgr. James Lisante.
It's great to be back with you again. Thank you for coming, making time on a busy Saturday to come and pray and reflect on the beauty of divine mercy. And I'm delighted to be back with you again. Thanks to Dr. Stackpole for always moving this program along, and I'll do the same. A couple of things I wanted to point out to you. I hope someplace out there you'll pick up a flyer about that radio program that I do, Personally Speaking. And I put it together actually with some humor in mind. I don't know if you saw the flyer and the poster they sent out this year to promote this, but the picture on there of me looks like I'm in the movie The Exorcist. I am one ticked-off fellow, and I'm not a ticked-off guy. I'm a pretty happy guy. So I made sure that the picture that you have here with me and Susan Lucci is a nice big smile, and I'm really not a bad guy. So I wanted to do that. I also wanted to thank an unseen hand. You see lots of us up here on the stage, but an unseen hand who makes all this possible every year is a guy named Ed Miller. And just on your behalf, I want to thank him for being that understated and wonderful support to this thing. I can't thank often enough the Marian fathers and brothers. I think I shared with you once many years ago, when I was like in 5th or 6th grade, they had a vocation camp up in Stockbridge for people thinking about the priesthood. Now, the idea that I even thought of priesthood in the 5th or 6th grade sounds funny now, but I think they helped to plant the seed that resulted, I think, in my vocation and probably the vocations of others. So for all the work that the Marians do for the church, we are, all of us, so very grateful, and I know I speak for you too. Over the years, I've told you so many stories, and very often they've revolved around both ends of life. The baby in my life, Matthew, who I helped to deliver, my nephew, who was almost subject to abortion and thank God was spared. And I'm happy to tell you in updating that story that this past year, since I saw you last, I got to celebrate his wedding. I said, like I do to all the couples I get to celebrate their wedding, I said, Matt and Jody, will you be wanting a ceremony or a mass? Uncle Jim, how could you have an uncle and not have a mass who's a priest? So we had a big, long mass. That was a nice thing. And then the other end of life is I still get to take care of every day of my life my 96-year-old mom, who sends you her love and is saying her rosary for you right now. Recently I came upon her and she's looking at a picture of my dad who's gone 12 years, and she's looking longingly at the photograph. And I said, Mom, you miss him, don't you? Oh, I miss him so much every day. And you love Dad very much. Oh, I will always love him so much. So I said, Mom, do you love him enough and miss him enough that you want to be with him? Oh, no. God bless her. Oh, Lord. I can't throw her at all. I try to shock her sometimes, so when I take her out for dinner, we'll be eating food together, and just to get a rise out of her, I'll say, Mom, this food is better than sex. And she'll say back to me, and you know that how? My Irish mother, very sharp still at 96, Okay, now on some serious stuff regarding mercy. This past week, you probably saw, as I did, images like the one on the front cover of the Daily News which is of a young boy who is no more because he was gassed in Assad's Syria. And this picture, and pictures like it, of these young, innocent, defenseless children being destroyed has caused the world to examine conscience in a new way. And I'm going to suggest that our reaction to the horrors of Assad's government and the treatment of his people is a good example of what mercy can do. See, over 500,000 people have already died or been killed in Syria. Over 5 million Syrians have been driven from their homes to other lands. So the horror of Syria, the Holocaust at the moment, is not new to us. But this week something happened. And what happened is something very much connected to divine mercy, and it's called empathy. An ability not to see things from a distance with a certain dispassionate sympathy, but to enter into the experience. See, that child whose picture I just held up to you, that could be your son. That could be your grandson. He looks just like one of us. And the idea that this young child, 6 years old, will never have a chance to enjoy life because of the horrors and evils of the world wakes us up. It makes us people who are proactive. We find ourselves saying for the first time, we who perhaps never even cared about Syrian children, something's got to be done. The horror's got to stop. The evil that permeates our world must be challenged. Now, whether or not you agree with the president's decision to bomb or not isn't the issue, but every one of us has had our heart opened to the reality that these aren't just names, this isn't just the Syrian people, these are individual kids made in the image and likeness of God and their moms who are no more. And when we are touched at a deep level, at a personal level, when for the first time our minds and hearts scream out for justice and peace and an end to violence, we become instruments of mercy. But I want to focus so much on mercy when it is most effective is always based on empathy. The ability to understand what people are struggling with because we are those people, because we can relate to those people. I've said to you before, and it's true, as a young priest, I'd visit people in hospitals, I'd go to wakes to do funerals, and I'd say the right words, but it was not until I was sick or people I loved were sick, it was not until people I loved died that I could then go back into funeral homes and hospitals and see people who were suffering differently because it was no longer an intellectual exercise. It was now a matter of the heart. Divine mercy is always a matter of the heart. It's not just the brain, but it's our ability to put together brain and heart and see with new vision and then to act. See, mercy's never any good if it's just held within. It's got to be put into action. And that's why you're here today. How can I best leave this place and become an instrument of God's divine mercy? I'm going to suggest to you, too, that one of the best things we have to feed empathy and, in turn, mercy is the sacrament that Father was speaking of before. You have this great opportunity. Please don't blow it today. You have in the library afterwards all sorts of priests available for confession. And here's a great deal. We're having this conference right before Holy Week, Monday, throughout the metropolitan area, every church, Diocese of Brooklyn, Archdiocese of New York, Rockville Center Diocese, from 3 in the afternoon on Monday till 9 o'clock at night, we lucky priests are locked in the confessional. And what a great thing, because I'm telling you, the ability to be divine mercy is fed directly by our willingness to go to confession and to make it a confession that matters. Why? If I want God's mercy through sacramental reconciliation, if I say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned," and I accept His forgiveness in the name of Christ, don't you see what it does? It then compels me to leave that confessional and then to be the mercy and forgiveness of Christ to others. How can I ask of God mercy and forgiveness but be unwilling to share that mercy and forgiveness with others? So the transformation that happens through the sacrament of reconciliation, the sacrament of mercy, is that we become instruments of that same mercy to others who are out there in need of healing. Now, you know and I know that confession is something that we all have around us all the time. but we don't take advantage of it enough. Many of you will go to confession this week, and yet there are many who will say, I just can't bring myself to, whether it's nervousness or pride or awkwardness at saying my sins to another person, and I get it. I never go to confession without feeling awkward. I always have a knot in my stomach. I always walk out a better man. But going in is tough for all of us. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. To say to another human being, even though he's in persona Christi, to say to another human being, I'm a mess, and I've made a mess of my life. To find in my heart the ability to confess those 4 categories of sin. I sin in thought, envy, resentment, jealousy, holding a grudge. Another way that we sin in thought. I was just up to a men's conference, 1,000 men in the Diocese of Syracuse, and the speaker before me spoke about men and their addiction to pornography. And I thought to myself, geez, this is a big Catholic group. This can't be a big problem here. Then I heard confessions afterwards. It's a big problem. It's all over the place. The internet has opened up a world to people, and it is a great invitation to sin. Sins of thought, sins of word. You got a mouth? How do you use it? Do you curse? Do you lie? Do you swear? Do you gossip? Are you negative? Pick all the time, seeing what's wrong with everybody else? The speck in their eye as opposed to the log in yours and mine? Are you someone who uses the gift of speech to build up or to tear down? Because if you're using it for the wrong purpose, you better say it in confession, because it's a sin. Me, I've told you a million times before, I'm only really bad with the mouth in one place, when I drive. And that's tough, you know, because you figure nobody's hearing it, but guess who's listening? Jim, cut it out. The gift of speech becomes for us an occasion of sin if we don't use it rightly. Sins of thought, sins of word, sins of deed, stealing, hurting another person, abortion, sleeping with other people that are not your spouse. And I've said to you before, if it was about sleeping, it wouldn't be a problem. Any action we take that is contrary to the will of God, and if you're not sure about that will, check out a new thing they've got called the 10 Commandments. Sins of thought, word, deed, and finally, and this is important because it's so rarely confessed. When was the last time you went and said, bless me, Father, for I have sinned? I want to share with you my sins of omission. Omission is the missed opportunities every single day to do the right thing, to make the world a better place because you choose to be involved. I'll give you a good example of that. Pope Francis highlighted it for us beautifully recently. You know how you go into New York, I go into New York, you're always seeing homeless people. Well, I try to make a point of leaving something behind, but I realized the Pope was challenging me recently because I took my buck and I dumped it into the box, the cup, and then I quick got away. Now, I felt good about myself, right? But the Pope says, Jim, not enough. Look that person in the eyes. Connect with that person as a child of God. This isn't just some poor person you're helping. This is some individual who I made. Treat them with the dignity and respect and love and compassion that Christ himself would. It changed the whole thing for me, from just a drop in the bucket to a connection with someone who is just like me, except that they have fallen on harder times. The ability to be a person who does the right thing, who doesn't walk on by, who doesn't miss the chance to connect. Sins of thought, word, deed, omission. Today in the library or Monday in your parish, would you bring those sins there? But I'm going to ask you to go a step further. For us to really be transformed into instruments of mercy, I'm going to ask you to make a different kind of confession. And I've challenged you on this before, but it needs to be said again and again. Most of us go in with the same old sins. You know, I know some people in my parish, I could tell them their sins at this point, you know. Yeah, Mary, I know that one. And then, yeah, the Mary I'm talking about is great. We have the line, you know, the line of people outside the confessional. She's the one that famously said to me, I've been really good, Monsignor. I haven't got many sins. But on the line behind me is my husband. Let me tell you about his sins, you know. Tell your own sins, Mary. Tell your own sins. But whether it's Mary or you or me, I have a theory, not untested, that in all of our souls, locked away in the corner, in the dark corner, is a sin we committed long ago that we've never confessed to anybody because we're ashamed of it. because we can't believe we did it. Because how can I ever say these words to a priest? I did this horrible, terrible thing so long ago. So we lock it away, and it just festers, and it never gets healed, and there's a cancerous hole in our souls because of that. I'm asking you this year, 2017, unlock the door. Bring that horrible sin, or what you perceive it to be as horrible, into the light of God's mercy. Let him heal you completely. Don't just tell us the sins that are easy. Tell us the sins that are hard to say. And this year, unlike any year before, make it a true confession so that you can become, this Easter, a new creation, a better instrument of mercy. Open the door, let it out, let it out. Okay, now, if we receive his mercy at confession, and we do, then we got to share that mercy with others. And by that I mean we have to become the Spirit of God made real, the Spirit of mercy made real. How? I'm going to suggest some practical things. I want you to do these things, and when you leave here today, don't just walk away and say, it was a nice conference. But it was a conference rather that changed me and made me more merciful because of a few things that I did. Number one, can you leave here and in your mind's eye think of that person who's hurt you the most, the person who's wounded you, betrayed you, let you down, broken your heart. And then I want you to think about, in mercy, forgiving the unforgivable. To be God's mercy, we must find it in our hearts to forgive the unforgivable. You know somebody who's wounded you. You know you've been damaged by someone, and it's hard to ever get past it. What do we say? I might forgive, but I'll never forget. But if we don't forget, then it keeps hounding us. Can we forgive the unforgivable? Second thing I'm going to suggest, can you work at loving other people more even than you love yourself? You see, once we get out of ourselves, once we say, I do for my family, I do for my friends, not because I want to feel good about me, but because in their happiness is my delight. When you love others more than you love yourself, you are free then of the burden of self-centeredness, me, and we become then, again, instruments of his mercy. When it comes to giving, another way to be merciful, can you give, and this is really tough, not of your abundance, but of your essence? Look, if I get $1 million, and I don't, but if I had $1 million and I give you 100, frankly, no big deal, no big loss, no big challenge. But if I have $2 to my name and I give you $1, I'm giving you half of everything I own. I'm not giving you from my abundance. I'm giving you from my essence. Now, we're thinking in terms of money, but forget about the money. You can do it in many ways. Don't you know people who are really hard to listen to? I see some people coming at me in my parish, and I want to run the other way. Oh, God, she doesn't know how to tell a short story. Oh, God, it's the same story as last week. Oh, God, I see why her husband left her. When I say give of your essence, I mean give of your time. Give of your ability to listen from your heart. When people speak to you, do you notice how often we're thinking of what we're going to say in response and we're not really listening to them? I'm going to ask you, in listening from your essence, to give not what you can afford to give, but to give what you can afford to give. Time. Listening with your whole heart and soul. Listening with true meaning. Can you do that, and in so doing, be an instrument of his mercy? Number one, forgiving the unforgivable. Number two, loving others more than you love yourself. Number three, can you give of your essence, not just your abundance? And four, probably very tough, can you see, when you leave here, can you become blind to the externals and see every person for who they are? That face, the face sitting next to you, behind you, in front of you, the face you'll meet down the street, is the face of God. You know, we all of us, if we're honest, we box people, we block them because they're a different color, different religion, different ethnicity. We all do it. And you know what I was struck by? You know, recently a white guy, blonde hair, blue eyes, who looks like somebody you'd love to have in your family, comes up from Baltimore, and he decides, I'm here to kill black men. And he succeeds. And that black man he killed, who everybody who knew him says was the most lovely man, but he was homeless and he was going through garbage pails looking for bottles. When you and I walk down the street, if we see some guy, blonde, blue-eyed, in good shape, white, we feel pretty secure. After all, he's a lot like us, right? And that guy in the garbage pail, I don't want to get near him, I don't want to know him, but he was clearly the better person. And he was the victim of the guy we thought we would have liked. We cannot continue to judge by externals, whether it's religion or color or culture, but rather be able to say, I'm going to take everybody at face value and accept that that face is the face of God. Why do we write so many people off? To be an instrument of mercy, I've got to be able to say, everybody gets a fair shake from me. Everybody. You know, I was around for 9/11, as so many of you were, but 3 days later I had to go to Washington to tape a program. And I got on a plane, and nobody wanted to fly back then. You know, it was such a frightening time. But there was a guy 3 seats in front of me who had a turban on. He was a Sikh. But you know, it didn't matter what his religion was. He wasn't like us. So every one of us sitting around him, I know we all had the same thought. This guy gets up to go to the bathroom, we kill him. Well, he must have felt it too, because after a while, the guy, before we took off, he stood up and he said, I'm a Sikh. I had nothing to do with this, you know? But we do that. We judge by the externals, and we are wrong as often as we're right. Can we, in being instruments of mercy, see everybody for who they are, equally with us, a child of God? Okay, let me talk about a problem when it comes to mercy and being an instrument of mercy. We, all of us, I think, have to grapple with one of the great weaknesses that keeps us from being the instrument of mercy God wants us to be. And very simply, it's called hypocrisy. You know, there's a reason why. You think of Jesus and sin. Jesus names 17 times in the gospel the sin of hypocrisy. He knows that's the big enchilada for most of us. And what is hypocrisy? It's calling people to live what you yourself will not live. It's asking people to do what you will not do. It's expecting of others what is not expected of you. And we're all guilty of it. All of us. Every one of us has some hypocrisy. I'll give you an example, a couple of examples. We priests, we talk all about, you know, be sensitive to the poor and do for those who have nothing. I will never, as a priest, be homeless. I will never have to wonder where my next meal is coming from. I will never have to worry about my health insurance. The church takes care of all that. So those issues, when other people don't have those, are instruments for my concern. I've got to be, if I'm a person of mercy, saying, hey, Jim, you've got it good, but so many others don't. It would be hypocritical for me to say to people, go take care of others unless I'm willing to do it myself. Another example, a painful example. For 30 years, I was involved. I love the teachings of John Paul when it comes to human sexuality. But for all the years that I talked about birth control and premarital sex and extramarital sex and the dangers of pornography and all those sexual sins we talked about for so long, all the time I was calling people to live a more holy life, to see sexuality as a gift from God, which it is. My church was participating in horrible scandal. My church was allowing children to be destroyed emotionally and physically by abusive priests. Now, there's 2 categories of sin here. There's the sinners who did the activity, those priests who committed horrible acts against children, but then there's the institution, the bishops, the cardinals, who did little or nothing to stop the horrors for years. How in the world can we be expected as a church for anyone to take us seriously about sexual ethics in light of what we allowed to happen? Last week, I spoke to 60 people, 30 couples, all engaged, who were at pre-Cana. And as I started to share with them the teachings of the church on sexual ethics, I could see in their faces the judgment. Hey, why should I listen to you guys? You weren't there to protect the special innocence of children. And you know what? They'd be right. We are hypocrites, so many of us. We expect our children to do sometimes what we won't do. We call them to live a life that's better than ours. We don't realize sometimes as we condemn their use of marijuana, we're knocking down the next beer. All the things we ask people to do that we ourselves don't do. I know I've told you this before, but I'll give you a classic example from my life. every week when they were younger, I'd have my nieces and nephews at church. They listened to my Mass, and then I'd take them out for breakfast afterwards. But they'd have to tell me in the car, what did I say in the homily? Tell me what Uncle Jim just said. And one Sunday I thought, a great homily about custody of the tongue. Don't curse, don't lie, don't swear, don't get angry, don't be mean. Anyway, I get in the car, I'm driving them, and somebody cut me off. And things came out of my mouth that shouldn't. And Anthony, 10 years old, not 10 anymore, but 10 back then, he taps me on the shoulder as I'm raging against this other driver. Uncle Jim, what? Uncle Jim, what? Anthony, what? What, Anthony? Uncle Jim, can I ask you a question? What, Anthony? Do you even listen to your homily, Uncle Jim? We cannot be instruments of divine mercy unless we are sincere, authentic, and true. Every time I'm a hypocrite, every time I fail to do what I call others to do, I am undermining my ability to be a person who is real and genuine, and therefore a person of mercy, a person of goodness, a person who is an instrument of forgiveness to others. I get my authority from my ability to truly see. Another example that comes to mind, I was just on a show on PBS, and he said to me, when it comes to immigration, do you stand with Pope Francis or with President Trump? I said, it's not one or the other, thank you. Don't set me up like that. But I'll tell you this, what Pope Francis says about immigrants, documented or not, he's basing his life on the teachings of Jesus. The Jesus who says, he who welcomes the stranger welcomes me. He who welcomes the stranger welcomes me. I don't see how anybody who follows Christ isn't going to be sensitive to the struggles of a person who wants to have something better for their children. You know, in your mind's eye, I know we all join in saying, somebody's got to do something about the borders. I get that. But think about this. You love your children so much. Yeah, I know you do. If your kid had no chance for a future, no promise of a meal tonight, no decent home to live in, no future at all in the country you lived in, wouldn't you want to go to the greatest country in the world? See, I get it that we have to fight to make things legal and get people the right path to citizenship and all that stuff. But if I don't want to be a hypocrite, if I want to be an instrument of mercy, I've got to say, how can I judge and condemn people who are doing for their kids what I would do for mine and you would do for yours? I don't have any, by the way. I don't want anyone leaving here saying, that Monsignor Jim talked about his kids today, My bishop would not like that, please, You know what I'm saying, though? For us to be instruments of mercy, we've got to be empathetic, even to the point of saying, I want these people here legally, but I get their struggle. And you know what? I might very well creep through the Mexican border into Texas if I had no hope for my kids, no future for them. Mercy becomes real for us when we say, I understand what you're going through because I'm willing to walk in your shoes. The greatness of Jesus is he always spent time trying to understand people so that he could better love them. He's at the well with the woman married 5 times and living with her boyfriend. That doesn't sound like a judgmental God to me. I want to get it. What is it about you that you have 5 husbands? Or he talks to a Samaritan woman. First of all, if you're a Jew, you don't talk to women and you don't talk to Samaritans. Why did he do that? Because he wants to understand. To be an instrument of mercy, I've got to look at my kids and my grandchildren, my wife, my husband, and say, I'm going to try to walk in your shoes. I'm going to try to understand who you are and what you're about and why you struggle. And that gives us the ability to see the fuller picture. And that's probably, I think, at the heart of being a truly merciful person, to really get it. Story I want to tell you. When I was in high school, I had a great friend. I'll call him Dan. He was a great athlete, and I was the king of the debate team. Oddly, we were an odd couple, but we were good friends. At the end of high school, was sitting outside his house one day in a car, and I tell him that I've made my decision, and I'm not going to take those scholarships to other colleges to debate. I'm going to give the seminary a try. I'm going to go to Cathedral College in Douglaston. And this guy, who loved me as a brother, became furious with me. You are totally blowing it. You are wasting your life. You could have been something. You're going to waste your life as a stupid priest? Are you kidding? Let some losers do that. You can be a winner. Don't give it away, this life of yours. He said those things to me. He was so tough on me. I was hurt, obviously. Advance now almost 40 years, and a call comes in that my same friend, married with 2 beautiful daughters, one of them has been in a car accident, and she's died. Jim, can you come and say my daughter's funeral? And of course, I do. It was a beautiful celebration of her life, but my friend waited till a few weeks after the funeral to say to me, I owe you a 40-year apology. What you're doing with your life is so important, and it's wonderful, and it's good, but I never realized that till I needed you, really needed you, to help me through the worst thing I've had happen in my whole life. My friend, Dan, had come to see with fuller vision. That's what helps us to be more merciful, to see all the sides, not just some. That makes us a better instrument of God's love, His compassion, His empathy, and His mercy. Can we see with new eyes? Leave this place with new eyes. Okay, every year when I come here, I try to leave you with a penance. I'm going to leave you with a penance now. Okay, you leave this place, Msgr. Jim's penances for the new year. Number 1, leave here and from now to Easter, custody of the tongue. Don't say anything unless it's good, kind, and loving. This is going to be one of the quietest groups of people in New York. Penance number 2, can you, today, when you go home, speak the words that matter? If you haven't said it lately, tell the people you love that you love them. I love you. If you've blown it and you've been bad to people in your family, have enough humility to say, I'm truly sorry. You mean the world to me. Please forgive me. If you have been hurt and someone apologizes to you, would you be good enough to say, you know what? I forgive you. In all those ways, we're no longer committing the sin of omission, but doing and saying what needs to be said and done. 20 years ago, when I was the pro-life director for my diocese, I used to meet very often people in crisis pregnancies. And one woman in particular came to me and she said, I got 3 kids, I'm divorced, now I'm pregnant by another guy. I can't do it. I'm thinking of an abortion, tell me why I shouldn't. And we sat, we talked many times. Anyway, now advance 24 years later, and I'm giving a talk in Hicksville, New York, and at the end of the talk, a kid comes up to me and says, you got a minute? Sure. My name is Stephen. I said, Stephen, hi, have we met? Well, kind of, but not really. 24 years ago, he said, you talked my mother out of termination, and you placed me with a family that I love. And I just realized recently, talking to my folks, that you don't even know me, and yet you made a difference in my life. So I'm here to say, thank you for my life. We don't get a chance, we priests, so often to hear that kind of stuff. Stephen was not guilty of the sin of omission. He did, instead of thinking about it. When you leave here, you can either leave a conference like this saying nice thoughts and go on with the same patterns of life, or you can walk out of here a new creation. It's all based on how you love, how you empathize, how you are promising before God to be an instrument of His mercy. Final thought. I believe that mercy usually begins at home. And anything I can do to increase love in the home, I'm going to do. So, I've come here today equipped. If you came here with your spouse, would you please stand? I would really love it if you spouses could sit next to each other. Good. I'm the celibate, you're not, okay? Okay, now would you turn toward each other and hold hands? I'm going to ask you the same 3 questions that you were asked when you married years ago. My friends, what you're about to do in renewing your vows, are you doing it freely and promising to give yourselves completely to each other in marriage? If so, say yes. My friends, second question, do you promise before God that you will forever love, honor, and respect each other as husband and wife? If so, say yes. Third question, if God has blessed you with the gift, the miracle of children, grandchildren, do you promise by your example to teach them every day the way of Jesus Christ? Yes. Okay, now husbands, this is an intelligence test. I'm going to say I, and then you insert your name. Take you, and you better get her name right. Let's start. Here we go. Husbands, let's start. I take you to be my wife. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. And now, wives, I take you to be my husband. I promise to be true to you in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health. I will love you and honor you all the days of my life. You've declared your consent before God and God's people. May the Lord in his goodness strengthen your consent and fill you both with his blessings. What God has again joined together, mankind must never divide. And to that we all say, amen. Let's hear it for our friends. Yay!